A voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. The season of Advent invites us to be people of hope. And at this time, there is a renewed call for hope. A voice cries in the midst of this pandemic, prepare a way for the Lord. The first mission I was sent to was in northeastern Uganda to a place called Karamoja, a semi-desert area where the largely rural population depend on livestock for survival, although some cultivation is possible during the short wet season. One afternoon I was walking along the dusty road that runs past the front of the parish centre when I met one of our parishioners, a young woman called Margaret, who had her newborn baby strapped to her back. Margaret was smiling from ear to ear and was proud to introduce to me her healthy baby son, and she told me his name was Nsubuga. I was surprised to hear the name because it's not a name native to that area, but is found amongst a tribe from central and southern Uganda. It is a custom to give a baby a name that reflects something of the circumstances of its birth. So for example, if a child is born during the time of rain, then the child is named after rain. But Nsubuga, where did the name come from? At the time of Nsubuga's birth, there was tension and conflict in the area. Many of the men had guns, which they used to protect their animals from raids from neighbouring tribes. But equally, they used the same guns when they themselves went to raid cattle from the neighbouring tribes. The presence of the gun, the ongoing raids, had resulted in many deaths. So the government stepped in and deployed the army to disarm the Karamojong. Initially, they had tried to do this by encouraging voluntary handing over of guns. But when this approach seemed ineffective, a more direct approach was used. In the morning before sunrise, the soldiers would cordon off whole villages, and as the sun began to rise, they would force the men and women, young and old, out of their homes, and then they would search the homes for hidden guns. It was an effective approach, but it bred great hostility and resentment, and unfortunately didn't always go off peacefully. Some people were hurt, others killed. So the soldiers were regarded as enemy. Margaret was in her home in labour together with an old lady who was attending the birth when soldiers started shouting and demanding everyone to get out. The old lady argued with the soldiers, but they were insistent everyone had to get out. But a young officer heard the distress of this lady, and when he discovered what was happening, he ordered that Margaret and the lady be left in peace, and he then stood guard at the entrance to Margaret's home. So when Margaret gave birth to a healthy baby boy, she asked the soldier his name, and then gave it to her child. In that time of tension and conflict, Margaret, by giving her child the name Nsubuga, chose not to be imprisoned by the conflict, by the hostility, the anger, the hurt and the revenge. She chose not to be imprisoned by the past and by fear and prejudice, but by giving the name of someone who was regarded as an enemy, Margaret brought that person into the family and made him a brother. She chose, in naming of her child, to live a present not imprisoned by the past, and so opened up the possibility of shaping a more peace-filled future for her child and her community. And this is what Advent is about. We are preparing for the birth of Jesus, the Prince of Peace. What imprisons us and prevents us from living peace, living forgiveness? What prevents me from seeing others as brother or sister? We are invited to enter into the wilderness of our hearts, to where perhaps we are imprisoned by hurt, by guilt or by shame, prejudices, struggling to forgive ourselves or others, in this time of pandemic, perhaps fearful of the future, struggling with loneliness. The wilderness can engender fear, but God offers us the hope of new birth. God is mercy. None of us are beyond hope, and no situation is beyond hope, because we know through Jesus that we and every human being remain God's beloved sons and daughters. No one is cut off from God's mercy. Every act of forgiveness allows for the possibility of new birth. We are forgiven. We can start anew, live anew, forging a world with God where we are all truly sisters and brothers, where no one is left outside. Let us prepare with hope for the coming of the Lord during this period of Advent.